Welcome back. Welcome to the Premier Mindset by Premier Performance LLC. I'm your host, Trent Mailer, LCSW, licensed clinical therapist and performance coach, and this is episode 72. To start off, I got a question, which for my guest is, what do you think people misunderstand most about combat sports like Jiu Jitsu?
One of the things I think that people kind of misunderstand about it is it's because a lot of people when they like hear combat sports, they think it's like kind of people are like ripping people's arms off and you know thinking like UFC and it's like super intense and stuff. And I think jiu-jitsu is pretty cool because it can be pretty like low key. It's one of the things where if you go into a class like one at the gym I train at, you might come across like some 16-year-olds that have been doing it since they were 6 and they're killers. And then you can also run into like um your 55-year-old dad who's in a family of four that's just kind of taking it and really trying to like learn the techniques and stuff. And I think it's kind of a cool place where a lot of different types of people can come together. So that's one thing I guess I think that people misunderstand about it is it can be a thing that really anyone can do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I do think that's a huge, misunderstanding a lot of people have is they think it's just like one type of people that do these things, and understanding you can come from so many different walks of life to do this is pretty powerful. And to kind of fully introduce, before we further jump in, this is Andrew Trimble, and I want to give you guys a little context on my guest today. We've known each other for about 14 years, and we actually didn't play football together, but we were on the same high school team. We just missed each other by, about a couple months, kind of. But he came in a year after I graduated, and we've been connected ever since through a really close friend group, and we've stayed in each other's lives through the last decade plus. He's someone I've seen grown up, build his life, and recently really lock into something he's become extremely serious about, and you see it in his life kind of pop out all the time. He also works as a full-time job at PG&E as a gas control technician, but outside of that, he's built a real discipline and identity around jiu-jitsu, competing, training heavily, and now even teaching at times. What I think makes this conversation interesting is how someone builds something high level in their life that isn't just about their career, and what does that do to their mindset, discipline, and identity. So before we fully dive into it, I just want to remind everybody this podcast is for education and performance growth. It's not a replacement for therapy or medical treatment. If there's something you need, make sure you go and get it. And on top of that, all of our social media accounts are linked in the episode description, so follow along and get involved in those communities as we continue to grow. So going back to you, Andrew, what originally pulled you into jiu-jitsu? What called you to that?
So it was something that I wanted to do for a long time, and I've been since growing up, kind of like a big fan of like the UFC and stuff. And then I listen to like podcasts like Joe Rogan a lot too, and he advocates for it a lot on his podcast, and he has like guests and stuff, Jocko and a lot of like military guys, and they say it's like awesome. It's like one of the best forms of exercise, and it's something that you could really kind of sink your teeth into. And I moved up here. I grew up in like the Bay Area in Concord, and I moved up to Chico for work. And I didn't know really a ton of people, so I had kind of a lot of spare time on my hands. Like I'd go to the gym and stuff, but I guess I was kind of looking for a hobby and something to really kind of invest like some time in and stuff. And I looked it up, and there was a couple jiu-jitsu gyms in the city. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna like go in, see how a class is. The cool thing is a lot of gyms have like free trials that you can do where you sign up and you go for a week and see how you like it. And I pretty much immediately from day one like fell in love with it. My plan was only I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go like once or twice a week and kind of do it like pretty casually. And kind of like right off the bat, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm doing this every day, and it's kind of something that you could really fall in love with. That's how it was for me, at least. So that's kind of what like pushed me into it and got me, I guess, through the door.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's cool just finding things in life that just grab us and it just becomes like such a core part of who we are very quickly. Did you know like almost immediately that this is something you're gonna stick with, or did it take a little bit to really get into the flow with it and find your footing in it?
So actually it's funny because like the first class, I had actually been to a jujitsu class a while back. One of our close friends, Jordan, me and him went when I was a lot younger, like maybe 2021, and I just did like a normal class, and it was pretty cool. I kinda, so, like, when you do a lot of the techniques and stuff, especially if you've never trained or done any sort of grappling, um, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Like, you're not gonna remember the moves. The moves are like a foreign thing. It's almost like it's almost like learning a language. Like, it's just pretty overwhelming at first. So, when I had first done it, I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's cool, but I don't know, like, I don't know if it was for me." And then the second time when I went back when I was like 28, and I did my first class, uh, we did it like our normal drilling and stuff. And then like at the end of class, usually it's like, oh, hey, we're going to do some live rolling. And then they're like, yeah, man, you can like go for it. Like obviously do like what you're comfortable with. You haven't trained before. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll give it a try. And I went against one of the blue belts there. And I was like blown away by how helpless I was.
Mm.
And that kind of like it was like an eye-opening moment for me. And I was like I just didn't like ever think that. I was like, wow, like you go into a class and you're like, uh you know that you're gonna lose and stuff, but, for me, I was like, I'm like a athletic person, like, I lift weights and stuff, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll probably be able to, like, hold my own a little bit," and that was not the case at all. I, like, got destroyed, but it was kinda something that I was like, "Wow, that's something that's super cool," and I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I wanna do it where I can spend a lot of time and, like, really, like, go a lot, so, from then on, I kinda fell in love with it, and I was just like, I gotta go to every class. I gotta go every day, like, watch stuff on YouTube, like get videos and stuff. And that's kind of, I guess that's like, answering the question, like what really like got me like, uh, that fell in love with it was actually like doing the jujitsu, like rolling, not just drilling the moves, but like getting to apply the art in like its totality.
Yeah, and I think you really touched on something huge that I see a lot of high performers and elite level competitors run into, which is just that overwhelming feeling when you start something new because there's so much you don't know and there's so much you're not used to. And, sometimes it is just kind of pushing yourself forward into it and just being a sponge and absorbing all these things like you were, like just learning and putting yourself out there and recognizing that helplessness feeling and kind of doing some things to make sure it doesn't continue and trying to find ways out of it where other people may feel that feeling and just kind of quit and give up and just assume like it's not going to be for them. But I think that's really the thing that sets people apart. How did you really push towards that, and what motivated you to try and figure it out and cut through that overwhelming sense of just like learning that new language and understanding it and really, getting a grasp on it to the point that you can teach others now?
Well, the cool thing about it is, because like when you start out, obviously you don't know anything, and um, you progress so fast. Well, at least like for me, I would go a lot, and when you go a lot, you just get a lot of mad hours, and you actually can like notice yourself like getting better on like almost a class to class basis or a week to week basis. Like I would do a little not a little game, or like I would just have a little thought in my head, and I was like, well, if I were to like verse myself um a week ago, do I think that I would beat myself? Or like you could do it in a longer distance. Like I was like, if I versed the me of 1 month ago, and a lot of times I'm like, I would for sure beat that person just because like you've stacked that much more knowledge, you've gotten that much more familiar with the positions and stuff like that. And I think it's just a cool thing because you can see yourself progress so fast in like kind of a sport like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've seen that from the outside looking in of just seeing you move up these ranks and just get better and better in really quick amount of times too. And a lot of that's a testament to your own abilities and your work ethic. But I do have a question about that is what's been the biggest plateau you've hit? Like what area do you feel like you had an issue kind of breaking through and how did you get through it?
Yeah, there's definitely been, and I think if you talk to anyone who does jujitsu long enough, they'll all say like you definitely um, hit plateaus and you get in kind of ruts where it's like you don't feel like you're progressing or you don't feel like you're getting better. And a lot of times, like if I get into like something like that, I just try and like you know not take it easy, but like, cause I'll watch a lot of videos or watch like instructionals and stuff, and sometimes I have to like get away from that because at the end of the day, it's something that should be fun to you. So I'll just be like, hey, I'm not research anything. I'm not gonna watch videos. I'll just go to class and sometimes like, not mess around, but like just go in with like like open mind and not try and specifically do certain things. And sometimes like when I do that, like stuff kind of hits you and you're like, oh, wow, like, this position that I never really thought of is something that's like working for me. So it's like, oh, maybe I'll look at some stuff from that position and it kind of can like slowly open like a little branch or a little path that you can kind of follow. And then when you do that, you're just adding kind of tools to your tool belt.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think in some ways it's almost counterintuitive where when you feel stuck, a lot of times people push harder, but it sounds like you just kind of let it be open, let yourself kind of relax and figure yourself through it. And you did, and you would find these things and see different angles. And, I think that's a lot of things in life that when you try and force things, you almost get more stuck. Like sometimes you just got to let yourself open up and see where things go. So to kind of change, what we're talking about a little bit, I know I've seen you compete. I've been lucky enough to see that happen and see you win and do your thing. And you've competed in some high level tournaments and done some really awesome things. I'm curious what changes in your mind when you're actually competing and, there is consequences on the line and you're trying to win. Like what changes in that mindset?
I think so. A lot of people, I don't really get nervous, and I think that's like I just played sports my whole life. So, growing up playing like basketball, baseball, football, um, when you just done it competed so many times, like I just try not to make like a super big deal of it. And I know jiu-jitsu is a little bit different. I mean, it's not like I'm doing like MMA and like punching people and stuff, but you can still get hurt. Like the person's trying to choke you out or twist a limb in a way that's not supposed to be twisted. But I just try not to like psych myself out too much. And it's kind of bit me a couple times where I've came out and been too like almost not ready to go, like I'm too chill. So there's definitely a balance between, having the nerves and being too like at ease and just trying to get at that sweet spot of like, you know, it's something that you do every single day. For me at least. I'm just doing jujitsu at that point. And the guy across from you or the girl is kind of in the same boat. And I'm sure that, they're probably nervous too. So I try not to make like a super big deal of it and like psych myself out when I compete.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's almost striking that balance of not getting too in your head about it, but also not being too relaxed. Otherwise you can come out flat. How do you do that? How do you find that balance? Do you have like a routine or anything like that? Like, do you have a way to get yourself kind of prepared to go perform? Or do you just kind of let yourself find it each day kind of differently than the last? Like, how do you go about it?
So I've had I guess I've done like different stuff and I'm still kind of working out the kinks on doing getting like a good routine down. But it's cool a lot of times like when I've competed, I have at least one person there who I've trained with and is like a friend. So it if you have someone there where you can kind of like warm up and stay loose, that is like a game changer because the last thing you want to do is go from 0 to 100 and not have gotten like kind of a sweat and not gotten a good warm up. So I think like the key is getting in a good warm up. Um, I try not to eat like super heavily too too close to if I'm competing. Um, I feel like it kind of can like bog you down a little bit, and I try not to be like starving either, because that can kind of like lower performance, especially like in jiu-jitsu. Sometimes like it's not just one match, you have multiple matches throughout the day. So trying to like time that kind of is a thing in itself. But yeah, I guess trying to get like, if you can get like a pretty good warm up before you're gonna go, like the kind, I think the sweet spot is about like, if you can get like a decent sweat like 10 minutes before you actually go out and compete. For me, that's been when I've had my best performances.
I like it. That makes a lot of sense. So with that, in these performances, what have you noticed that losing teaches you that winning can't? Like, what is the difference in that?
Well, losing sucks, but it's definitely something that I think is important, because it kind of makes you when you win, it makes it worth it, you know. And usually when I lose, I know this is like kind of cliche or whatever, but I almost take away more from it, because it doesn't expose holes in your game, but it gives me a lot of new. It's like, oh man, like I really got to work on this. Like one thing for me, because I never wrestled in high school, and in jiu-jitsu, like the first thing that you do is you're in stand up. And one thing that was like eye opening in one of the first tournaments I did was like how difficult it is to take someone down that does not want to be taken down.
Mm.
Like, so just from like that standpoint, it's like, oh man, like I really gotta in these next couple of months, zero in on like some takedowns and like start working kind of your stand up game a little bit more. So I've had people I've competed with, and like, I tell them and they agree with me. It's like, if you do lose, like it can be kind of to what we were talking about when you get into a rut, like that motivation of like, oh man, like I really got to work on this so I could zero in on like those positions or like that certain technique that beat me. Um, and I think you can get a lot better from your losses.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've seen that a lot of in my work too, not only for myself, but in a lot of the clients that I've worked with that, winning feels great. We all love it. Success is awesome, but it doesn't really teach us much. It kind of just says keep going. Where when we lose, you kind of pressure test the system and see where the flaws are, see where the holes are, see where things aren't going the way we need them to. And that's where we can really learn and grow and develop. So seeing that you've kind of learned that yourself going through this process is pretty awesome, and just really reconfirms almost that need to kind of pursue the ability to lose, which means you're actually pushing yourself and kind of pushing that comfort zone a little bit. With that, have you ever noticed yourself, and I'm sure you've noticed it in, practice and, when you're just rolling and things like that, maybe or maybe not in competition, but have you noticed a difference in how you perform and what you're doing? Like the techniques you're doing, the strategy you're going about when you're exhausted or overwhelmed? Like, have you noticed a difference in that? Or is that something that you kind of just rely on the things you already know? Or is it something you just don't even really notice a whole lot?
Yeah, well, I think that is like one of the most important things, especially for like if you want to be a competitor, is cardio. Because you could be like a world beater, like when you're like good to go, and almost everyone if you, especially if you're like at a certain level, like you're gonna be really good when you're fresh and you're not tired. But some of like the hardest rounds are like if you go against like wrestlers and stuff that just have like really good cardio. They might not have the best technique, but like you can feel your like stamina bar just like going down. And there's definitely, like, I guess, like you want to be like have good technique and you want to be able to do certain things, but you definitely have to manage your like fatigue level, especially if you're doing like competitions and stuff and you have like multiple matches. You don't really want to like, uh, and it happens sometimes. You might have like your first match is just like super hard and you're exhausted, and I've definitely had that where I've competed a couple times. And like when you have that one match that just drains you, because it's not only your cardio, but like your muscle fatigue, like your grip strength, your ability to like think. When you're tired, like you make kind of worse decisions. So yeah, there's definitely like kind of, and it's in all sports, just balancing that of, not getting too tired, coming out too crazy, and doing smart things to like um, protect your stamina, I guess.
Yeah, you got to kind of be strategic about it, and treat it as part of the performance, part of the competition itself. With that, have you ever surprised yourself in competition in any way, whether it's like pulling something off you didn't think you could, or winning something you didn't think you were going to, or being able to last longer than you thought you had left in the tank, or even something else?
It- Uh, I wouldn't say surprise myself. I don't I don't know, it's weird. I like because some people, I guess they can go into competitions and be like, "Oh, like, uh, I'm gonna, like, win, like, there's no way that I could lose," or, like, you have the inverse, like, I've especially, like, MMA fighters and stuff, I've heard a lot of people talk where it's like, they just have, like, leading up to their match or their, fight, and they talk about, like, "Oh, man," like, they just think of, like, the worst things, and that kinda, like, motivates them, I guess. I guess I'm kinda in the middle, like, at the end of the day, it's like, I know that I can lose, and I know that like I have certain things that if I do, it's going to give me like a really good chance of like winning the match. And in my training rounds, leading up to like a competition, I try and put my or like have those difficult rounds like and train with like people that are better than me so that when I am in a competition and I get put in those uncomfortable, bad spots, you're not panicking. You're like, I've been here before. I know what to do to get out. I've gotten out, you know, going against like really good people. So, um, yeah, I guess, I'm not, I haven't really surprised myself too much, but, yeah, like, I guess that's my take on that.
Yeah, totally fair. So with that, what do you think jujitsu has taught you about yourself as a person? Just going a little bit deeper into it. What do you think you've learned from just the process of jujitsu?
Well, I guess, I haven't it's something that, like, because you hear a lot of people say, like, it's super difficult to do, and it is at times, like, you're pushing yourself a lot of times, like, every day, like, you're pretty sore at the end of it, and I guess it just kinda, like, reassures for me, like, doing those difficult things is like is rewarding and I just like doing them. And it's for me, I've always like from the get-go, it's been fun for me. So it might be one of those things like as I get older or and maybe your body's more beat up and it becomes not as fun. Like it's something that, I might not do it as much, like when I get a little bit older, but for now, it's just been like super fun. And, I guess just kind of reassuring is like, doing those difficult things, being rewarded from doing it and kind of that.
Yeah, that's powerful. And not a lot of people willingly choose to chase difficult things and feel that feel good on the other side of it. And it's such a huge part of passion and purpose and feeling like you're living a fulfilled life. So with that, if you stop jujitsu altogether, like say tomorrow, what do you think you'd lose outside of just straight up fitness?
Well, so another kind of reason going back to like why I did it is, I kind of miss, I played like high school sports and sports my whole youth growing up, and then kind of unless you're like a elite level athlete and you can play, football, basketball, baseball, rugby, lacrosse, soccer, whatever it is in college. One of the things that, at least for me, that was tough, like, was losing that camaraderie and like having a team and like, you know, all my friends pretty much were from like sports. So I had kind of like, because I would go to the gym and stuff and I would still get like, my workouts in or whatever after playing sports. But I just always kind of missed that team aspect and having like, a bunch of friends from the gym. So that's one thing that like I've gained in jujitsu is I train around a lot. I train at like a bunch of different gyms. I have like my home gym that I train at in Chico, and there's actually a couple gyms in Chico that I train at. But there's like a really good gym in Yuba City, one in Reading, and one in Vacaville I train at too. And just the friendships that I've made and like the people that I've met there. They're all like super cool people. And so I would definitely miss that if I stopped doing it.
Yeah, that's huge, and that's such a big part of life is being able to stay connected with people, and I think a lot of people run into that where it's like middle school, high school. You get tons of people to choose from, a lot of ways to connect with people, and then it slowly just ends, and you're kind of left on your own to find people if you don't have people with you. And I've worked with a lot of clients that have struggled with loneliness, and in all honesty, the number one thing I tell them to do is find something to do that they like, that they're passionate about, and then connect with people around that thing, whether it be joining a running club because you love running, or joining a hiking club because you love hiking, or such as yourself, joining jujitsu gyms, and starting to build those friendships with the people there is such a powerful way to do it. Because at the end of the day, even if you don't know what to say or how to connect with these people, you can connect on the thing you're doing, because we're all there with one shared goal in mind. And that camaraderie piece that comes with it really causes a lot of bonding, especially doing difficult things together. So I think that's super powerful. With that, what's something you used to think was true about jujitsu that actually you were wrong about, like as you got into it and learned kind of firsthand?
Like, well, like there's it's, the popular meme online, the Bradley Martin where, he's like, but I'm 275, so it doesn't matter. Like I'll be able to kind of take anyone. And
Yep.
not that like you go into jiu-jitsu with like a huge ego, but I think it's like, it's super cool, especially for like as a martial art, like even for like women to do. Cause I think it's like the one martial art that size does matter, but if you have like a wide skill or a wide gap in technique, you can really like do well. Like you can be like 130 pounds, and just because how like the techniques work and stuff, like you would be able to submit like someone that's much bigger than you, like 200 pounds, especially if you're like a black belt and they're like a white belt, um just being able to use different like joint manipulations, and really having like really good body control, because you can if you're like good, like where your weight distribution is supposed to be, and somebody that's like brand new coming in does not know that at all, and they're going to be pretty clumsy. And the number one thing I see, especially like sometimes you get like big bodybuilder guys come in and stuff, and they kind of go not all aggro, but like they just kind of get so exhausted so fast. And if you're good and like the techniques that you're supposed to be doing, like having good frames and doing stuff like that, you can, once they gas out, like they're almost like a baby that you can just like move and have them like hold them down and like kind of almost do whatever you want to them. So I guess that's kind of something that's like when you first come in, especially as like someone that like, went to the gym and like did stuff like that, you know that, at least for me, it's like I knew that I was gonna lose, but you don't know how bad it's gonna be until you get in. And then you start using techniques, and like I've had like girls and like women, especially when I first started, like especially if they're like purple belt or higher, like pretty much have their way with me. And that's kind of like a eye-opening thing as well. You're like, wow, like that's kind of the cool thing about the martial art is it is a lot of technique. Like size does matter, but it's like the one martial art in my mind that a small person could totally defend themselves against like a bigger guy.
Absolutely. I actually had a little bit of experience that myself informally in high school. I had a, a kind of friend. He was around for a little bits of time, and he was doing wrestling, and I had a probably 60, 70 pounds on him. And I figured I could literally just outmuscle him and I'd be fine. And he made me tap out in like 20 seconds. And just that humbleness that you talk about of just like, yeah, it's way more than just strength. Like there's a lot that goes into this. And if you don't know what you're doing, like you can get wrapped up real fast. So, it's cool to see that continue to be a lesson that people learn, and there's so much to this, and that's the benefit of this, and also that it doesn't just go back to inherent size and weight. It's also just the ability to train and learn these things, and you can dominate in different people in different ways if you really put your work into it. In general, like what you've noticed in that difference between someone who's casually training versus someone who's like seriously going after it, like what you've seen and just their capabilities, how they're going about it, and just what they're able to do.
Like I was saying, one of the thing, like you definitely usually can tell if someone's like a competitor, because like in jiu-jitsu, a lot of people know we have the white belts, the blue belts, the purple belts, brown belts, and black belts. And the skill level definitely varies from like a casual person. Like um, I've trained with like some really, really good blue belts, and sometimes they've been training um since they were like really young, and they might be like 16 years old, and they compete a lot, and it's like they're just so elite at like some of the stuff that they do, and like the intensity that they train with, you can usually tell like it's just like a higher level. And I've been fortunate enough to like train at a couple gyms like when they're doing training camps for like world tournaments, and the rounds that you get with the competitors there, it's pretty much like a competition. Which that kind of goes to one of our previous questions, like is like getting nervous and stuff. Like when you put in like the hard rounds in practice, it's kind of just like another competition or like another day for you when you're doing the competition. So yeah, there's definitely like you can tell usually like after the roll you'll be like, yeah, I can tell like you're a pretty uh avid competitor, and they're like, oh yeah, I compete a little bit, and you're like, yeah, I felt it.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, kind of going back to these other sports, what have you noticed being really different about jujitsu specifically compared to training for other sports, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, any of these other things? Like, what have you noticed being different and kind of standing out about jujitsu?
Well, it is an individual sport. So, when you're doing football and basketball and baseball, it is a team sport. So, you have, a coach, and you have people pushing you and stuff. And uh, it's just a lot more, I guess, not buttoned up, but like it's like you have practice at this day, you have to go, and you have all this stuff where jiu-jitsu, it is an individual sport. And you kind of set your own schedule, so it's kind of up to you. It's like, hey, I know that we have a class on Monday, and like you don't have to go if you don't want to. So it's kind of like you have to stay kind of disciplined if you want to be like kind of a competitor and stuff, and like make sure you're going to the classes. One of the things for me is I'll drive around a lot, and that can be kind of a hassle in its own regards. Um, when you have to drive an hour plus away to get like the really good rounds and stuff with certain people. So I guess, yeah, like kind of, it's one of those things that you go at your own pace. So you don't really have, like, I know, every school has like an instructor and stuff, and they can push you, and you do have your teammates that are around you, but it is an individual sport at the end of the day. So it's like you can go as slow as you want, or you can go as fast, and, go as many classes as you want. I know there's like professional gyms and stuff, like when you go to places like in Texas, and like there's a bunch of good gyms in like San Diego and stuff, and a lot of those guys train multiple times a day. And that's kind of like, that separates them, and it's kind of, yeah, one of those things.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's kind of one of those things where you reap what you sow, where it's very much individualized, and it's you don't have to show up, but at the same time you're not going to get the output you want, and no one else is going to show up and really give you the things or kind of cover up your lack of willingness. And if you do put that work in and invest in that time and energy, you do see things come from that. And I think you've seen that in your own abilities to kind of climb and get as good as you have gotten. With that, kind of going outside of the gym, what have you noticed about jujitsu and how it's taught you about your ability to handle stress? Like, has it changed how stress kind of operates in your life and how you manage it?
Yeah, I think for me, I guess I try not to be like just a stressful guy. You just kind of take things as they come, and if something happens and it sucks, you just kind of have to deal with it and take care of it. But I have heard a lot of people say that jiu-jitsu like helps them with that aspect of, and it kind of goes back to like when we're doing those difficult things, when something bad happens in your life, it doesn't seem as bad, because I guess you're mentally tougher by kind of doing some of the things that are hard with the sport. And yeah, I guess that kind of helps with stress. And then too, like it can be like a a decompressing thing. Um, you know, when you go there, I guess like one of the things, you're kind of everyone's beating each other up, and then at the end of the day, everyone's high fiving and hugging and stuff at the after class. So it's kind of one of those things where you kind of get a lot of that pent up energy, or maybe you had a bad day at work or whatever, and you can kind of really let loose in the gym and get all that out of your system. And then, when you come home to your family or whatever, you're like a much more calm, relaxed person. It's like, oh man, I got all that like pent up energy out. So I think that helps with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's great to have outlets, and having positive, productive outlets that actually build things and lead to things can be awesome. And with that being, kind of the nature of it, have you noticed yourself reacting differently to conflict now compared to before ever doing jujitsu? Like your mindset going into things, if something does happen, like walking around in life or in like a restaurant or situation like that. And I know it doesn't happen that often, but even if there feels like there could be conflict, have you noticed yourself just react differently to it?
Well, I haven't really and knock on wood, but I haven't had like an altercation or anything since doing jujitsu outside of jujitsu. But I would say 100%, like you would feel way more comfortable and confident if you did have to put yourself into a situation. Um, and I've seen tons of videos on the internet where someone who's trained, like there may be an aggressor and someone comes at somebody, and the person who's trained, like, you know, every day we're grappling and, not fighting each other, but putting, ourselves in those bad spots. So when somebody comes, from outside and tries to, fight you or whatever, they can defend themselves. And it goes back to our discussions earlier, where when you're trained and somebody's not trained, it's not easy to move someone around, but it's, you can do it like easily. So I would feel a lot more comfortable in a situation like that, having trained, opposed to like not having trained at all.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like it really just creates that confidence that I can handle myself and whatever's going to happen, I'll be good. So, kind of zooming back out again, if there is one thing you could kind of put out there as a message to anyone who wanted to get into jujitsu that you've just seen like a mistake that keeps showing up, especially for beginners that people just keep making, like what would you tell somebody like that wants to get into it and do it themselves, where it's like, just be aware of this thing? Because I've seen so many people run into this wall or run into this problem over and over again, and they just get frustrated and sometimes even drop out from it altogether. Like what mistake do you see that people run into?
I guess, just getting there, going to your first classes and understanding like this is something that takes it's a lifelong endeavor. I think like the average time for someone to get their black belt is like 10 years. So it's not something that it's going to be a day, it's going to be a week, it's going to be a month, it's going to be a year. It's going to take a lot of time to, get good, but I think it's worth it. And when people first start, one of the things that helped me is just ask tons of questions, especially if you're training with black belts or like higher level people. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Be like, and your questions might be stupid. It's like, hey, how come I kept getting submitted from that or whatever? And they'll be like, well, you're doing this one thing that's like not very smart, and then you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing that. So I guess if I was giving advice to somebody who's just starting or wants to get into it, is, take it slow, like just show up to class, ask questions. And I think that would kind of go a long way for people.
Yeah, that power of patience is huge, and without it, people burn out very quickly, especially with things like this that are longer burns, and you're going to need to learn and be able to put that ego to the side. So I know we focused a lot on jujitsu, but your job and your career is still a huge part of your life, and it is a highly sensitive situation as well, where things can go wrong. And I was curious, what part of your job at PG&E carries real consequences if something goes wrong?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of the stuff. So I work. My job is a gas control technician, and I work on like the pipeline. So for PG&E, we get gas coming in from natural gas coming in from like Oregon and through I think it's Arizona, and they kind of supply the gas for the majority of California, and it comes in at like super high pressure. So um, one of the things with my job is like I work on the gas pipeline, like operating valves and doing a lot of the equipment or maintaining a lot of the equipment. And you have to really be locked in, especially when you're doing jobs around that, because all it takes is like one lapse in judgment or, one thing where you're not paying attention and you open up a valve that's not supposed to be open, and you have like 700 pounds of gas blowing in your face, or, you just sent gas downstream to, something where it's not supposed to go, and you have people down there. So it's definitely like they take safety like extremely serious, and you definitely like you have to be pretty locked in when you're doing that kind of work.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And, it seems like there's probably some overlap as well, just the ability to manage stress and the training that you do in jujitsu and having that kind of overlap and bleed into the work that you're doing and being able to manage these high stress situations too. And, just like any job, I'm sure there's times it becomes almost repetitive or routine. How do you stay locked in those moments when it does feel almost a little more monotonous and it's just another day doing another thing?
Yeah, that is 100% like that, I guess. And PG&E, they do a good job of like always reminding you like, hey, this is a task that you might have done 1,000 times, but all it takes is that one time for something to go wrong, and it could be catastrophic. So uh, they do a good job of like really pushing like a good like safety culture, and also um have it like I work with like five or six guys in my department, and it's a good habit, to have somebody there who's kind of always double checking your work, and kind of not having that ego is like, hey man, like you're over my shoulder, like why are you? And it's just kind of like a double checking thing. It's like, you know, I'm not second guessing you, but just making sure that everything's doing it the way that it's supposed to be done. And at the end of the day, it's like we all want to go home and be healthy. So um, having someone to kind of check all your work, and then you know staying locked in on your task.
Yeah, and I think again that again overlaps with jujitsu in a powerful way of just that ego piece of being tapped out, realizing someone's better at the sport than you, and being able to learn and ask questions and take that on, and having that come into the job at PG&E of like, hey, we're just in this together. We're trying to get something done. It's not really about me being the best or being perfect, and it's okay to double check things and see what I'm doing and making sure we're all aligned. So I think that's pretty awesome, and it sounds like you're really using a lot of this stuff to build up like the whole person of you, which is the cool thing with having multiple things that we do in life is they tend to lead to each other and overlap in different ways. And we even see this with professional athletes talking about doing multiple sports in high school and how common that is and how powerful that can be to your training capabilities. So with that, with your job, what's something about your job that would surprise people in terms of pressure or responsibility, something that most people wouldn't even think about?
I guess like it's because I would always see it, like, when you go driving by a job site or whatever, and, there might be like 20, 30 people on a construction thing. And it's like, oh man, there's just that one guy working, and like, why are all these people standing around? And I guess like from the outside looking in, um, just all the different like lines of businesses that can be under like one task. Like it might be doing like a valve replacement or like putting in a new piece of pipe, and you could have like 15 different like lines of businesses. But the cool thing is, everyone that does their task is an expert at that. So, you have like welders there, all they're doing is they're just doing some welds. You have, technicians there, they're the ones who are trained, and like they're going to be operating the valves. You have like a clearance supervisor that's kind of running everything, talking back with like gas control, and making sure that everything's like operating good on both ends. You have like safety people there. There's inspectors, there's just a bunch of different people all doing different jobs that make the one thing possible. Um, so I guess that's kind of the cool thing is like, everyone has their task that they're an expert in, and like seeing it all come together and like do like a big task with like 30 different people.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that is really great insight because I think a lot of people don't fully understand these situations and often even get frustrated from seeing these things and not really getting why it's going these ways. And I think in general, all these different things you've talked about and gone into has been super helpful for a lot of the listeners out there about building up us as individuals, and that we're not just really one thing, and that pressure can hit us in a lot of different ways, and we can learn to manage it in a lot of different ways, and we can be compassionate about a lot of different things all at once too. And really the goal here with the podcast is building up those resilient minds to create those premier results. And I think you've shown that through your work and your ability to kind of handle stress and manage difficult situations in really amazing ways. And part of that is also the recognition piece, because many times you talked about recognizing when to ask questions or when there needs to be growth or what to develop, or being able to double check with people of how things are going. And that first step is such a huge part of performance and reaching these high levels that not everyone really thinks about. So it was really great having you on to talk about these things and really go in depth about it in a lot of different ways. And we'd love to have you back and talk about different things on these terms, because I think it is really powerful and helpful to talk about like high pressure situations and just the ability to build passion in our lives in various different ways. So I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, no, it was definitely awesome being on here. Big fan of everything that you're doing, the podcast and stuff. I do got to throw a shot at Max that I'm the number one fan. I got the most likes on Instagram, or I'm the most avid liker on Instagram. So I know
Right.
he called me out last time. So
You did. I love it. I love it. And you guys keep that competition going. We'll see where it goes. I'll keep tracking it all. And as always, this episode is meant to provide tools for performance. It's not to replace individualized therapy. So if you're struggling with anxiety, burnout, or persistent stress, professional guidance is always critical. At Premier Performance, we work with high achievers to implement strategies like these with precision, accountability, and results. And I make it a point to give you all actionable tools. So let me know if this is all helping, and let me know how this episode itself impacts you. If there's things that you want to hear more of, we can always get things set up and do more of these type of interviews, whether it be with Andrew or other people, or maybe bringing back Andrew and Max together at some point to talk together a little bit and see how things overlap. That might be fun, and we'll see how that goes. And, we're going to continue with this. We have more episodes coming out every week, and we're going to continue to do that. And we have content coming out every day on all our social media sites. And next week, we're going to dive into athletes who need sports to escape themselves and how that comes about and how these things show up in lives in different ways and why that happens, and also what to do to try and avoid that as well. So everyone out there, I hope you guys have a great week. Be the best you can be. Put yourself in difficult situations to show yourself what you can do, and always reach out to be your best. If you have questions or issues or things that we can help with, reach out and let us know. We'd love to get connected, and we'll see where it goes from there. But otherwise, everyone have a good one, and I will see you guys soon as we continue next week. Bye.